Hello and welcome to this edition of Behind the Screens with me, David Hart, and my colleague Mark McDermott.
Have you put that jumper on to sort of give the impression?
No, it's a bit cold as well.
Right, okay.
But yeah, so we record, no, you've given the game away. We record.
I only have two items of clothing.
in your wardrobe.
That t-shirt and this hoodie, that's it. Actually, that's not.
So I have actually changed, just to mix it up again. So we've recorded more than one episode in this section, and I'm wearing a different top, but that was just I got a bit cold,
All right, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Sorry, you were going to.
So what I was going to say, I was actually going to talk about what we were going to talk about today, which was.
You can also tell that this is the third one because I think it gets a little silly as we get into our second hour of chat.
So what we would talk about is whether doing things outside of work, if you wake up in the morning and all you do and think about is work until you go to sleep, and then maybe you dream about it as well, is that better or worse than someone who does things outside of work as well? So my proposition is, if you have things that you do with on a sort of regularity outside of work, it can make you a better business leader. What that thing is, probably it's
maybe not just leader, just can make you better at what you do, whatever your job is.
Could be, yeah. So it just so happens that with me and Mark, it both relates to exercise. And I don't want to be kind of super evangelistic about it and say, hey, guys, you should get out and, But it just so happens that's the way it works. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more. Mark's is probably a little bit more interesting in that his is actually a job. His sort of side gig is actually a job, whereas mine is just more of a thing that I do. But Mark needs to, he needs the money, so he has to go and get this work in the weekends and stuff.
Got to fund that drug habit somehow.
Yeah, I know it's not going to get. You're not going to get it from ScreenCloud. So I've known Mark for since 2003, and we've both always had a kind of relationship with. Exercise. That sounds like a really weird thing to say. But we've both done exercise, and Mark's has generally tended to be, I think, more kind of team, kind of group based, and I've been more of a solo exerciser. But actually, for me, I think it actually has made me better at what I do. And so for most of my life, I have been a runner. I'm not particularly good at running. I'm not particularly fast. I don't run particularly long distances. I don't do races or anything. But what I have done is created a discipline around running. So I generally tend to run 3 or 4 days a week, or 3 or 4 times a week, and I run between 5 kilometers and 10 kilometers each time. So it's effectively between half an hour and an hour, sort of, or maybe a bit longer, depending on what I do. But I think there are two things around that for me that make it something that helps me in my work and makes me better at what I do. So very broadly, so the first one is around discipline, and I'm like most people, especially I think in the kind of work that we do, where it's very much for a founder, but also just people who work in companies like ScreenCloud, you often have to be self-directed. So you haven't necessarily got someone going, right, today, here are 10 things you've got to do. Or it's not like you come in every day and you're sat on a conveyor belt. And especially when you're a founder, because you're constantly, as you grow, you're constantly hiring people to replace you. And there's always that moment of when you've replaced the particular role with someone who's much better at doing that role than you ever were, and you suddenly go, right, what shall I do now? Kind of thing for a moment, and then within about 5 minutes, it's gone.
Hole. Yeah. Enjoy it while it briefly lasts.
Yeah, exactly. And suddenly you're like, how did I ever manage to do all these things? But I think I don't see running as a hobby, because a hobby is something that you do when you've got a bit of downtime and you fancy doing something that you really, really love. For me, it's something that is it's ingrained in my sort of weekly ritual, if you like, and it requires a degree of planning and discipline. And some mornings I love going for a run, and other mornings when I'm sort of toasty and warm in my under my duvet and it's raining and everything, the idea of putting on trainers and trudging across the field is like, I don't want to do that. But I always I know now to have a word with myself, and I know what kind of tricks my brain will try and play on me to stop me from doing stuff. But also know that once I do it and once I get back, I will never regret. You will never go, I wish I hadn't done that. And I think actually having that degree of discipline and forcing myself and knowing how to kind of manage myself into doing things, you can apply at work. And again, especially if you're in that kind of role where you're having to constantly think, what is the best use of my time here? And I say it's with running, it's not something that I kind of love almost. I mean, I love doing it, and obviously there are all the benefits that people immediately think about exercise, which is endorphins. There is a link between mental health and physical health, healthy mind, healthy body, and all that kind of stuff. Those for me are kind of fantastic side effects, but they're not the fundamental reason why I do it. And then the other thing.
But what is the fundamental reason you do it?
Well, I think because it makes me feel like it makes me feel like I'm in control. So one of the things, as I say, is around the discipline. The other thing is...
I can't believe you did running just because you wanted to be better at discipline. I think the control one, that sounds more... which is part of... But I think that they're sort of almost part of the same thing. It's kind of... Right, I didn't do it because I think I need to be more disciplined in my life. How can I do that? I know I'm going to start running. But I think it does make me better at that. It was something something you enjoyed, like you enjoyed the feelings and all that when you were and then you realise it took on another life, and it still had all that original enjoyment bit, but then it became more important. It upgraded itself some way. In some way.
And I have rules that So, for example, if I'm working from home, I'll go for a run. That's one of my little contracts I have with myself, and it's just making sure that I kind of factor in that discipline into the week, I think makes me better at just generally managing my time. I mean, I'm not always successful at it, but
human.
Yeah. But then the other thing I think is, and I think it comes down to these things, is
it is a podcast, just FYI.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, touched his phone.
I've just shown the phone. I'm kind of just assuming that everyone's watching this on YouTube, but obviously they're not.
No, just the kids.
But I think that it's. I mean, it's a cliche to say, but we're constantly connected, even when we're not connected to work. You're at home and you're watching TV, you're having a glass of wine in the evening, and then you get a notification on your phone. You're not going to ignore it. You're not going, I'm not working, so I'll wait till the morning to check that particular notification. With running, you really, I am completely unconnected. Even if I've got my phone with me, I'm not tempted to look at it. I live in the countryside, so I'm running in the fields. There's no cars. There's no houses, there's no people, there's the occasional deer or rabbit or something like that. And I think being in that moment, and it sounds a bit kind of, I don't know, it's sort of wishy-washy, but being in that moment allows you to kind of focus in a way that it's quite hard to when you're just sat in the office. And for me, it's kind of like, quite often if you've got problems that you're wrestling with and you go for a run, almost inevitably, it's like little bubbles popping in your head. You can't kind of force it, but things suddenly, you kind of come up with an idea for something.
Well,
or
it's
you come
a
up
bit
with a
like
solution.
sleep, isn't it? Like often, like sleep on it is actually a thing, isn't it? Your mind rolls over, and it probably does it in a quite abstract way through a strange dream or something.
You're like, maybe I should fly to work. That will improve.
But it basically, your brain, there's different points in your consciousness when your brain works on stuff, and the most common one obviously is sleep, but the other one is for moments like this. I suppose it's kind of like a meditation.
It probably is a bit like meditation in that sense that so you're focused on putting one foot in front of the other. When you first start running, it's not like that because you're in pain,
not puking on the floor. Probably.
Yeah, exactly. But once you get into it and you get the rhythm and everything, and you're like, you're fit enough. You're sort of physically concentrating on putting one foot in the other and not tripping over and all that kind of stuff, and then somehow. Little things just kind of, for me, people always go, I had this brilliant idea in the bath or in the shower. I think it's that kind of, it's the same sort of thing. You're in the moment and you can't force it. So I don't think you can go, right, I'm going to go for a run and my mission today is to solve this particular staffing issue that I've got. That's not going to work. But I'd say sort of 99 times out of 100, I'll be running along and suddenly something will kind of occur to me and I just think, I could just do it this way. That would be a much simpler way of doing it. And it's not necessarily a massive eureka moment, but it is a way of kind of solving problems that I wouldn't ordinarily get if all I did was get up, turn on the computer and look at the computer. So I think for me, those two things, and I don't kind of oversell it and, as I say, over-evangelize the brilliance of running and how running is somehow a metaphor for life itself. But I just think personally, it has made a difference to me, and it makes me a better leader. I kind of think if you want to run a business, run a marathon or something. Yeah, that's the title of a blog, isn't it?
Yeah.
before you run a business, run a marathon. But yeah, for those things, for me, it's you know,
it's a feeling of pain.
People always say, oh, I know, it's great because, you know, you've got more energy and all that kind of, those things are great. But actually, I think there's something more fundamental about kind of making it something that's really integrated into your life, and, you know, things sort of just happen, and I think I'm a better person for it. So that's why I'm kind of pro encouraging people to do that as well within the company, and, you know, without mandating it. So that's my story. I know you've got a different but similar story, and it's definitely impacted on some of the things that you do at work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we mentioned it before, but basically, so I am a body pump instructor. So I teach a group fitness class called Body Pump, which is a Les Mills class. It's quite popular in most gyms. I think almost all the chain gyms kind of run these kind of classes, and it's a kind of high repetition weights class. It's a strength and conditioning class with a bit of cardio. It's not like hardcore powerlifting by any stretch. It's kind of basically for people who want to get a bit stronger and a bit fitter, and it's done to music. So it's group. So typical group size would be somewhere between, well, at the small end it could be like 15 people, high end could be like 30 odd people. And then you're up front and you do the class. So you are effectively a participant, but you're also the coach, which is instructing people how to do it safely, what to do, perfecting and encouraging and educating for better technique and for benefit, and then the final big one, motivation, getting people through it, getting them to work harder and all of those sort of things. So it's a class I always enjoyed in the gym. I never really liked the gym floor personally, myself. I never really knew what to do. I liked the fact that when I went into a class, someone else was in charge for a change. I think that's probably partly what drew me to it in the first place. I was lucky enough I was a member in those classes for on and off for about 10 years.
I used to come along to them.
Yeah. It's good. And, you know, I enjoyed it. And I could, ironically, what I can't do now as an instructor, but what I could do as a participant is I could go in and switch off. And because you're, you know, when you're lifting weights and lifting barbells and dumbbells and all this sort of thing and doing quite a lot, it's not like you say, you can't check your phone. I mean, some people actually do, but it's a bit rude. But
really?
Yeah, you see some crazy things in there. You see some mad stuff, honestly.
I guess if you're doing one arm,
it's more in between tracks, really, and stuff. But you do see some. I mean, I had a guy actually. He's actually I do quite like him. I think he's got a very, very stressful job. He just sat down during one track and he sat on his bench and put his laptop out. And I thought I felt like making a joke, and I thought actually no, he might have some. Yeah. He doesn't normally do that, but it was quite weird. Anyway, so wow. So I decided in 2017. I'd been using the class a lot to really help me with stress during the kind of particularly stressful period. And so I'd been going a lot more, and I was putting it in my diary religiously. I'd go to the same classes every week, and it was helping me through sort of with anxiety and stress, basically. It was my break from the world.
I suppose putting a structure
into same class,
week.
Same people. I was just like a classic regular member. Like now I see the profile, I it was exactly what I was like. I would always go to this one side. I never wanted direct view. I never went to the front. I'm not a front row warrior, as they call them. But likewise, I wasn't at the back either. I was kind of in the middle, to the left, have my thing, have my weights, knew what I wanted, liked the instructors I liked, went to their classes religiously, and was getting fitter and stronger, and it was really helpful. And then I got to know a couple of pump instructors, I mean, more just randomly. A friend of mine, his new girlfriend was a pump instructor, and went to her class a few times, and she basically said, "You're actually pretty good at this," which is unsurprising, seeing I had done it for 10 years and was really going for it.
I've probably done it for longer than you have.
Probably true. Yeah. Although I think she had done it quite well. Anyway, and then she said, "Well, why don't you consider sort of teaching it?" And then that sort of opened up a whole new thing, because, that sort of makes me like suddenly you're my 15-year-old really shy self, because I was very shy when I was young. I'm not now, and everyone always gets a bit surprised about that, but I was very, very shy when I was young.
It was because I remember you saying this is great because I can do it's helping me with feel confident about presenting, and I've pitched with you more times than I can count when we were in an agency. And I was really surprised. But I think there's a difference between pitching to a room of sort of 4 or 5 people where you're pitching and you're with someone else and you're talking about something that you're you're just chatting to actually standing up in front of an audience.
Yeah, and directing them. It's kind of different.
It's quite a big difference.
Yeah. And I mean, that always used to like fill me with absolute dread. I think it does with most people. But I didn't do it necessarily because of that. I needed a challenge at the time. I needed something that wasn't this company to get my teeth into. Otherwise I found it a little bit like, and I was single at the time as well. And I just wanted to get fitter. No, well, that's probably a bit true. But I had a lot of time. I don't have kids. I didn't have a partner. I needed something to fill the void, or it would have just been work and it would have been all consuming, and that never ends well. Particularly well. So yeah, I just thought, you know what, fuck it, why not? I mean, what an outrageous thing to do, like to just become a fitness instructor at 38 years old. It just seems like a ridiculous thing to try. And but you know, for me, it was almost like the journey was almost as much as, but now it's like it's in two halves. One is, can I even achieve this? Am I even fit enough? Am I even good enough? Like, will I fail? And then obviously the second bit is, now I am one, is how good an instructor can I be? And actually it's flipped, not to sound too worthy, but it's flipped in such a way that it's no longer about me and my ability to do it. It's now more of my ability to give the best class to my members. And I know it does sound a bit, but that's what a good teacher is, right?
But there is that parallel with being a leader within a company as well, isn't it? You want to bring people on and be the best that they can be and motivate your team and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think also, it was quite, so we're talking about byproducts. So I think one of the byproducts, which I didn't realise at the time, was obviously I talked about it with the team. We were quite open with the team, and it's kind of an interesting journey. And I shared it with people. I shared it with everyone. In fact, actually, that was partly so that I couldn't cop out. Because if I didn't tell anyone, if I secretly went off to become a pump instructor, then I could also secretly stop. So I just told everyone I'm going to do it. It's a bit like a marathon. You kind of enter it and then figure out how you're going to run that far, and then go for like one jog and go, oh my God.
Yeah, how am I ever going to run 26 miles?
So I think for the team, and especially the team at the time, and who are now still with us mostly, they were more kind of, they're probably people at the beginning of the career. They were learning a lot from me in terms of, and you and all of us really, in terms of how, but I think they could also see in me, I was the junior. Like, even if like the instructor teaching me might be 22 years old, but it's still more senior than me in that world. And I'm listening to them, I'm all ears, and I'm making loads of mistakes, and I've got loads of self-doubt, and probably quite a lot that a lot of those people had about working here. Like, will I make it through? Will I hit the grade? So I think the byproduct, I did see that people could see the vulnerability in me being basically a junior and a bit crap. And in fact, to be honest, being 38 isn't a perfect age to take this on, as I quickly realised when like my body started to ache like anything, trying to do all of this.
I don't know how you do it, and talk and shout and remember all the moves and everything.
Basically like good old-fashioned practice.
Yeah.
And
again,
also,
it's that discipline, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you might not get elsewhere.
Well, there's nothing quite as disciplining as thinking that there's going to be 40 people in a room standing there with weights expecting a really good instructor to come in and do it. And if they're not happy, they will complain and the instructor will get canned. It's quite a brutal industry. So you're like a freelancer. So you do get paid, but you're not employed by the gym. You're effectively freelance. You have your certifications with the company, and then you have to do a gym qualification too. So I'm a personal trainer, fairly basic level. I have to do that for health and safety, and then I also have to maintain my qualification and qualify with Les Mills. So I have these two qualifications which fundamentally give me the right to teach, I believe, anywhere in the world. I mean, apart from maybe not being able to take money anywhere in the world, but my qualification is a global thing, which is kind of cool, but I've only ever really taught in Britain. So I did that and I qualified, and it's almost like, God, I qualified and I was like, yeah, mission accomplished. Now suddenly, my first class I went into, I realized that the last instructor they may have had a lesson from may have 10 years experience. And so it's a bit like driving, passing your driving test. Oh, now you're a car driver. Oh, really? I don't feel like one, because someone with 20 years experience is like, yeah, it's fine. I'm like, oh, I still feel quite junior despite being the same level as you.
You kind of had imposter syndrome.
Oh, I mean, can you imagine? Yeah, I mean, like, extraordinary. Also, there's, and body image, like, am I, like, I'm not, like, some of the people in this industry are just phenomenons. Like, they're physical specimens of incredible. And then there's people like me. And, like, you stand up and, a lot of your self-doubt is, do I have a right to be your teacher? Like, who am I to tell you what to do and how to do it better, to say that you can do, like, who am I? And that is a huge thing. It takes a long time to get over that. And I don't think you ever do. Like, when I go away for a holiday or something and I have a break from it, I come back, I feel like a junior again.
Do you ever feel like, I really don't want to do this?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think it's a bit like you when you're running. Like, you know, I've got a class after this, for example. And to be honest, it was a bit I won't go into it in the podcast, but it's been a sort of a long week. And I don't really feel like teaching tonight, if I'm honest. I just want to go home. But that class is turning up.
Yeah.
So I know that I'll be a bit like about it until the moment I walk in, and then I see them. I know that one of my regulars, Julie's going to be there. She's really fun. She's always has a smile, and you know, we'll have a little chat, we'll have a little gossip, and then we'll get going. And I'll feel like I'll feel great afterwards.
Yeah.
I'll forget the stuff which is on my mind, thankfully, and I will. Yeah, I mean, it's very, very similar to what you're saying, but I think also what I've now. So it's other byproducts of it. So it's basically like two big speeches, isn't it? This podcast is like your half and my half.
Yeah, exactly.
I was reflecting on it the other day. So part of the journey is you get qualified, you go in, and then basically what you do is you get like a normal teacher, you get effectively supply work. They call it cover work. So when someone's either injured or away or whatever, you get to cover their class. It's actually quite rough because you're often walking in, they're disappointed to see you because it's not their regular one. And you've got to kind of earn their respect. And also you might not be familiar with the gym, the stereo. It's quite stressful actually, but that is your boot camp of like, and then you build your reputation by being good, by being by teaching the class well, by being responsive, by being up for it, by taking like shitty ones like, oh, it's like going to take me an hour and a half to get there at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning. I mean, you know, it's like a 3-hour round trip to teach an hour class for 25 quid. Yeah, the money's not phenomenal. Anyway, you do all of that and you earn your stripes, and then basically the gyms then start to give you a class, and that's how every week that's your class, and you then build that class, which is usually about 50% 3/4 regulars, and then a sort of pool of other members who come in and out and sort of, you know, might do it, might not do it. But then there's that core group, and they're there for you really, because they could go with, because it's the same sort of class with every other instructor, but everyone teaches it slightly differently. So it's whoever is connecting with you for whatever reason. And then, you know, as you build that, like that tribe, they call it, but yeah, it's a bit, you know, it's New Zealand. As you build that tribe, that's your tribe effectively, you realize that now you play a function in their life whether you realize it or not. And also they know very little about you. You're just Mark the pump instructor. I mean, most people think this is all I do, this is like my job. And a lot of people think I've been doing it for 20 years because of my like lovely grey hair. And it's flattering to think that I've been doing it that long rather than novice, but you know, in your mind that's all you are, but you do actually play more of a role than that. And so you always have to accept that responsibility that you walk in, that they, you know, there's a lot of stories in the industry about just how important that role can be to some people. Not to everyone. Most people, it's just like, I like his class, it's a convenient time, I go to it. Bada bing, done. For other people, it can actually play a much more significant part in their life. And one of the things that I've learned from this and starting to get to know these groups slowly over time, the evidence presents itself, or they just tell you, I've learned never to presume to know. Like, you just don't know what's happening in people's lives. And strangely, through this exercise and through this sort of slightly unusual setting of a group exercise class, you become like a confidant. You know, people tell me all sorts of stuff about everything. About their anxiety around weight loss or lack of it, their anxiety about body image, could be really horrific injuries or illnesses, depression, of course, mental health. I mean, just tons of things. Just general. I mean, like because you're sort of anonymous, you're just Mark. They don't even know my second name, and you're just the guy in the vest and the thing who's always reasonably chirpy. You know, that's because that's the persona. It's a version of you. And then you start to realize that, shit, I've got like my Wednesday class, I've now got 2 members. One's getting married in May. The other one just has a target for a holiday. But they're both on this weight loss journey and they're really doing well. It's hard going and they've had to completely change their life. But it's great. I'm seeing the progress, and they keep coming, and we're just chipping away at it. And we talk about it a lot, and I'm just thinking, well, in the tech world, I'm not. I don't know. Like, we have our customers now, different personas of customers, but we don't have that relationship with our customers.
Yeah.
And to a degree, that kind of level of intimacy
and
with staff would probably not be
because it's a little bit inappropriate, isn't it? I mean,
if they choose to share it, of course. Well, now I'm getting quite good at how to manage that, and also, and I use my coaches and my master trainers a lot for advice, because people have asked me out and stuff, and like you do become more than like
people have asked you out.
Yeah, I've had members come up to me after class and ask me for drinks and stuff.
Oh, I see. Like as in
for dates.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is when you've not been single as well. Because they just don't know.
They don't know. I mean, it's just that guy. I don't have a wedding ring, but I mean, it's. But you just they will fixate a bit, but again, they're fixating on the persona of the instructor, not necessarily the person. So, and you do have this position of authority, and your instructor looks very in control of their life, very kind of like, I got this, because that's the professional image that we have to give. And so, I mean, it has been brilliant. It has been just one of the best things I've ever done.
And I guess the sort of premise of this whole talk is doing that, being a body pump coach. A pump coach is I notice you. Is that what do you call him?
Body pump instructor, yeah.
Instructor, or pump instructor for short.
Pump instructor,
yeah.
Or just a legend. No.
Does being a PI, as I regularly call them,
I feel like it's ever been.
Has that made you better? Do you think at being a leader?
Without doubt. Yeah, without doubt. I think it's maybe a bit more confident, obviously, a bit more humble in other ways. It's also, I think one of the other things is you learn that, I mean, you literally learn this because it's just so bloody evident when you're doing the class, that you connect with people in different ways. So there's basically like 4 kind of personas. I don't know if it's interesting to go through them all, but basically the people, so we all learn and we all take inspiration from different characteristics. Okay, so some people like it quite sort of authoritarian, sort of almost like, do this, like don't give up, like don't you dare stop kind of thing. They kind of like that sort of brutal, and they like it clear and simple. Other people like very, very kind of more like, hey, we're in this together, affectionate, come, I know you can do one more, but like there's very different things. So some people are kind of like very pragmatic and very like, just hit me with the facts, man. And the other is like, hey, if I like you, I'll do it, kind of thing. And you see it the way they position themselves in the room. The people come up front are almost a little bit like challengers often. They're usually either fitter, more confident to a degree. Some of them might think, hey, I'm actually probably fitter than you are. That does happen. I mean, there's some of these people are fit. And, they're almost challenging or authoritarian a little bit. They don't realize it, but there is an implication. The shy ones at the back, maybe they don't want to make eye contact. They feel self-conscious, maybe about their body weight or whatever. And some people just want to escape. And some people don't want to even connect with you at all. You could say anything you like to elicit any sort of response, and you'll just get blank.
Yeah, some people just like, look, I've got an hour to do this. I just want to do my shit.
Just get on. But what you also find is, actually, the story about the person the woman that asked me out, was that I actually thought she hated me because when she was training, and that's the other thing you also learn is like to kind of grow a bit of thick skin. That when people are working out and it's getting into that part of the class or the track where they are just, they're struggling, they're tired, the facial expressions are kind of extraordinary, and it's basically a massive group of people looking really pissed off in your direction. Well, it gets sort of through you, because obviously there's usually mirrors behind me, which they're kind of seeing their form and stuff, or just checking themselves out. But I think, and she was like a death stare, but she would always set up just in front of me, and I felt awkward. And then when she came up, I actually thought she was coming up to complain. I was always nervous about her as a participant. I never felt the connection. And then she asked me out. And it was so weird. And I was just, what? Anyway, it was all, I won't go, I mean, this is public, so I'm not going to go into it. But I didn't go on a drink with her, needless to say. But I was like...
Did she come back for another class?
She didn't for a couple of weeks, and I felt really bad. And then she did. And then we had a little chat about it when we both were less embarrassed. And it was fine. It was cool, and she carried on being a regular member. She didn't ever set up in front of me again. She kind of moved to the side. And you know, you just, yeah, I think there's just something. It was something you said earlier about kind of it's just a hobby, and I was like, I really believe in investing in your hobbies. I think a hobby is where your interest begins. Like, you enjoy the feeling of jogging, and I enjoyed the class. But when we both took it on another level and challenged ourselves and took it on to a level of discipline and expertise, you know, I mean, you talk yourself down in terms of you don't compete and stuff like that. But if I was a novice runner, if someone asked me, can you know, I want to start jogging, but I don't really know where to begin. I mean, you'd be probably one of the first people who comes to mind. I'd be like, oh, well, David does this very regularly. He really thinks about it. So I think he's the kind of person you want to be speaking to about this subject. I've run, but by comparison, I don't have anywhere near the degree of sort of thought that's gone into it. I'm just pretty trainers and go around the park. But I think you'll take it to another level, and you know, so. Yeah, so I think it is important to invest in your hobbies and to have a multifaceted life, and I think, you know, startup stuff can get all consuming, and you know, like, when do you ever stop working? Well, you know, there's no off switch for this. Like, there's always more we can do, even when we've delegated it. It's like 5 seconds.
And there's that sort of guilt of like,
I should be doing something.
Yeah, I should be on the whole time. But I think sometimes I think it gives you perspective as well. It's like, just, I mean, as if you've said, you've had a different perspective about people, and it's making
and their challenges.
You talked about humbling and that kind of stuff. I know that sometimes I can be quite impatient with people. I don't think I'd necessarily show it, but inside I'm. And I'm sure there's been times where you've had that impatience with people who you just think, well, why aren't you just doing it? Or why are you? I've
got a really good story about that. This is humbling. So I have this small class on a Tuesday. It's a local Wandsworth Council one, and it's quite a small studio. One of the things, especially when you're still learning to be an instructor, is when people go off time or go off and just doing it wrong. It's a really weird human thing, but it can draw the instructor off. So you go off time because you're seeing it. I can't see a mirror. They can, but it's like, so their offbeat draws you off. So you have, when people are doing the wrong time, you have to be like a metronome in your head and stick to the right time, regardless of what's going on in front of you. It's really difficult. And there was this guy, and he was really off. Like he had, always kind of moving around, like balance clearly wasn't good on balance. I mean, guys are usually bad on the leg stuff anyway, but like this was really bad, and like timing was poor. But he was always in front of me, not literally at the front, but it was a small studio, and I used to kind of get a bit pissed off in my head about him because he's a nice guy, but it was like, fuck, like this is really drawing me off, and now I'm losing it, and I'm now, it doesn't take much to trip you, and then suddenly it can car crash during this thing. You've got to stay on form. Yeah. Anyway, he was helping me put weights away. As I said, he's a nice guy, and usually my little pissed off bits would be gone once I got back on track. It was okay, and I'm like, just look somewhere else, look above his head or something. Yeah. There's loads of tricks, and then everyone had gone, and he was helping me put the weights away, and he told me about his brain tumor. How do you think I felt about that? So he's been tumor free for about 10 years, and it would explain why he always wears a bandana. I'd never known about that. I just thought that was his thing. But basically, he has a massive scar. And during the brain tumor thing, he lost hearing in one of his ears, which has fucked up his balance, basically. Yeah. And he goes to the gym every day, and when you know that, you see him doing what he's doing, you think amazing. That's incredible. Yeah. Rather than, Jesus, man, just learn to lunge, which honestly was... Yeah. And I felt like the world's worst person. Now, obviously, I'd never vocalized it. Thank God I didn't. Yeah. And that and other lessons I've had from people who've told me things about them, that's like, okay, do not presume to know what is going on in someone else's life. And I think that is a good perspective for a leader. Yeah. Well, this week we've seen the lead singer of the Prodigy, and Keith, and just like he just don't know what's going on. The guy's like ripping it up on stage and being there was a photograph of him 2 days earlier running in a 5k race, looking really happy. So look, you just don't know. It's supposed to be a fun one about hobbies, isn't it? But I suppose when you take anything seriously, you start to really look into the depth of it, and usually very few things in life are just like frivolous, like when you actually take them seriously, and when they start to matter to other people or just matter a lot to yourself, it does take on a different role, whether it was an accident or not. I mean, it's like I didn't start any of this for the stuff I've just told you.
Yeah. It just comes. Yeah, but but
once you're there, you're there.
We were talking earlier about hiring people with different backgrounds and having different perspectives, and I think this is all part of it, isn't it? The more perspectives you have on everything in your life, it allows you to sort of make better decisions, possibly gives you ideas that you wouldn't ordinarily have kind of had because you weren't exposed to certain stimuli or whatever. But so in conclusion,
I think it's extremely valuable. I mean, there's times clearly where it conflicts with things. I mean, especially when I have to learn new material and stuff, and there's days where the weather sucks completely and you have to go and face the elements and might even get sick from it. You never know. I mean, it may have triggered the odd cold or something, although you're pretty healthy generally. But like, it definitely can cause conflict. And actually, a lot of people will say, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
You're mad. You've already got enough on your plate. You're totally crazy for doing it. And they think they're doing you a favor by trying to put you off the thing you love. But maybe that's a bit brutal, but you know what I mean? I think they're well-intentioned, but actually a lot of people will try and divert you off it, to just go, well, why don't you just go back to classes? Why don't you just teach once every so often? Well, yeah, that's not...
Yeah.
That won't cut it, I'm afraid. Also, I owe it to my people, to the people I teach.
And if you genuinely feel like it's improving everything in your life, obviously it's not the magic wand that solves everything.
No. I do wonder about how long I can teach for, because I'm going to be 40 soon. But actually, it looks like if I basically keep myself
when I
injury
first met
free,
you used to play hockey.
Yeah.
And that was very physical, and
yeah,
and you did that for quite a long time,
about 15, 16 years.
I'm sure in 10 years' time, whatever, there'll be something else that will come along, and if you decide that you can't do this, I'm sure something else.
Well, I mean, there are teachers in their 60s. I think it's all about how you sort of look after yourself and your desire to do it, really.
Yeah.
And I would love to do it for as long as I can, in whatever various degrees that manifests itself. But I can't recommend it highly enough, apart from don't do it as a career, because unfortunately you won't make enough money and you'll have to do so many classes your body will fall apart. So I would say don't do it for that reason.
Yeah. Well, they often say, don't they, like, if you something you like doing and you turn it into, I mean, if I literally had to run 50 miles a week or something to earn a living, and then you get injured and then you start to resent it, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, right. Well,
there we go.
That's it. That's a little bit more of an insight into
who we are and
our sort of
maybe actually we've talked about this a little bit. I know we don't really we haven't looked at the stats. We don't really know who's listening. We know that a lot of friends and family and people that know us listen to this. But if you're someone who doesn't actually know us and you're still listening, I'd like to just hear from you. I'd like to. I mean, just Mark at screen.cloud, David at screen.cloud, or social, easy to find, Mark McDermott, David Hart. I just want to know.
Yeah.
In the same way that I want to know, like, what my participants in my classes think of my teaching and how I can improve it and stuff. We're doing this for ourselves, definitely, but also for other people too.
Yeah.
There's no cynicism in why we're doing this podcast.
No, exactly. I mean, we have had feedback from people,
but mostly people we know, that,
or that they're looking for a job, so they're probably going to be nice about us anyway.
Yeah.
So,
God, your podcast is amazing. Can you do a job?
Yeah. So, which is good.
Actually,
by the way, if you're listening to this,
I do actually appreciate it, and it does work.
Yeah, if people have done that, have taken the effort,
they take the time to listen to all this, then they probably deserve it.
They deserve a job. Yeah.
But yeah, it'd just be nice to know. It's always been amazing for me to good or bad. Or just ask us out on a date.
God, something really weird happened to me today. Oh, it's probably too long for this podcast. But basically, this old lady, really I saw this old lady working in Tesco's, and she said, and it was a Tesco I'd never been to before, and she said, "Oh, hello, I haven't seen you for ages." And I was like, "I've never been here before." And then she started saying, "Oh, you remind me of this guy that used to come in then, who looked like Paul Newman." Oh. No one's ever said that to me for kind of pretty obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And then we had this kind of weird conversation where she goes, "Oh, if I was a bit younger, I'd be chasing you up the street and I'm like, okay,
young man.
Yeah. I was like, wow, that's flattering in a strange way.
Did you say it's because I run a lot?
Yeah, let me tell you. And there's two reasons why running is really good.
It's also developed me as a leader as well. I think she probably would say, "Oh, don't worry about it."
I'll
just wait for Paul.
I didn't realise it was a break now. Yeah.
That's quite funny.
That's quite funny. Yeah, her colleague said, literally, put your shopping in your bag and run. But yeah, there you go.
Nice.
So there was
you're very attractive.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
All right, on that bombshell. Yeah. As I profess my love, in last episode you professed that I wasn't your friend. It's let's see if we can make it to 30 episodes.
Okay. Until next time.
Cheers, Bye.